Lesson 118 is on completing the square, and it requires certain steps to follow, and they tell you what to do, and then you apply that to different equations. And so I want to go over these steps first. They're at the bottom of page 496. It's called completing the square. And so if you have an equation, as you know, when we like factor a trinomial or a quadratic equation, we have like an x squared plus a something x, like 2x plus a number. We have three sections, and sometimes they're not all there, and so like we have that, and so we need to figure it out how to make it into a quadratic equation. And so they tell us how to do that. And so you write the equation in the descending sections like we did just then. So for instance, if I had let's say well, I'll just use example 1. X squared plus 6 equals negative 10x. And so to do that, first of all, I'm going to put it in descending order. So I'm going to move this over here. So I'm going to add 10x to both sides. And I'm going to put it in order. X squared plus 10x plus 6 equals 0. And now we are going to subtract 6 from both sides because this is a perfect square, and so that goes away, and I'll explain that in a second. Plus 10x equals negative 6. Now, this is the step that is new. So on the bottom of the page of 496, it says, so we already did this. It says, number 1, write the equation in descending powers. We did that. Number 2, use the additive property of equality to move the constant term to the right side of the equation. I did that. This is our constant term, and we moved it to the right side of the equal sign. So I did that. So now we have this. Now, this is called the coefficient right here. That's a number with an exponent right there. Variable. So this is our coefficient right here. It tells us, number 3, divide the coefficient of the x term by 2. We're going to divide this by 2 and then square the result and add that to both sides of the equation. So I'm going to take that 10x and I'm going to divide it by 2 and square it. And so over here on page 497, you can see how they did that. So they took the 10x, divided it by 2, and squared the whole thing. You see that? So we took the coefficient of x, which is 10, divided by 2, and squared it. Now, that equals 25. So if I were to square, that'd be 100. If you square 10, you get 100. If you square 2, you get 4. 100 divided by 4 equals 25. So we add that to both sides of the equation, is what it says in number 4, the top of page 497. The trinomial on the left side is now a perfect square. All right? And so we want to simplify the right side. So I'm going to rewrite my equation. X squared plus 10x plus 25 equals negative 6 plus 25. Whatever you do that, so you have to do this side. Does that make sense? So now I have it rewritten, and that's going to be 19. Let me just fix that. 19. All right. And so now I can say that that is a perfect square, and so I have x plus 5 times x plus 5. That's what that is if you were to factor this trinomial. So that's squared equals 19. All right, and so what we want to do now is we want to square root both sides to get rid of all this. So we square root both sides, and that would be x plus 5 equals plus or minus 19, square root of 19. So that is the answer. I guess I could, they move the 5 over here, so x is isolated. So x equals negative 5 plus or minus square root of 19. And so you are just simply going to do that exact same thing in your homework. You're going to take, they have 2 of them, and you're going to follow those steps. Follow those 1 through 5 steps on the first part of that, and you will do just fine. It's just some practice. And we have another lesson coming about that too.